Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Baltimore presents I'm Baltimore, and today I am bringing you the Muir Island Saga. This is one of my favorite actual storylines because it kind of culminates an era of X-Men history before it delves on right into X-Men 1, the brand new issue that swept the nation. So Muir Island Saga was basically all the wrapping up of probably about 4 or 5 years of storytelling that kind of coalesced into these 5 issues. It's X-Men 278 through 280 and X-Factor 69 and 70. And this is Chris Claremont and Fabian Nicieza who are writing this. It's so good. This is 1991. Such a great story. So the setup for this is the Shadow King has been manipulating and possessing and turning to the dark side the characters that are in Muir Island, which is Moira McTaggart, Legion, which is Xavier's son. Polaris was acting as the nexus to the physical world and the astral world where the Shadow King was, and she was feeding off a negative emotion. So, that was kind of like their symbiotic relationship. Madrox, the Multiple Man, was there. Siren was there. Guido, Strong Guy, was there. So you had a whole bunch of characters. Rogue ended up being there as well. So it was this really cool time where you had like some former members, some new members, and some kind of like ancillary members of the mutants that were there at Muir Island. In the meantime, X-Factor was still in New York. It was the original 5, and they were just coming off of, one of their storylines that I think dealt with Bobby in Japan, and some other little, miscellaneous stuff. What happened right before this was the Extinction Agenda, which was a really great story. You have to read that too. But the Muir Island Saga. So basically, X-Men found out that the X-Factor found out that X-Men were alive, vice versa. They came together. They were reunited and so forth. And then, of course, the X-Men go immediately off into space, and they rescue Professor Xavier and bring him back. So now here you are. You're all caught up. So Xavier and the X-Men go to Muir Island because they've Forge and Banshee have told them that the Shadow King is doing something there. And Shadow King's whole thing is he possesses people, and then he manipulates them, and then all the negative energy and the hate and hatred, he boils that up, and it just kind of foments and goes crazy. And so this is one of Xavier's longtime foes. He's constantly fighting him and going up against him. So what happened here is the X-Men and Xavier go to Muir Island. The X-Men are attacked and quickly subdued. Xavier leaves, is able to escape. He goes back to New York. He goes to his mansion, which is in ruins because that's what happened at the end of Inferno. So there's no more mansion. He goes to try to check the the underground areas, and he runs into, above ground, Stevie Hunter, who is the old dance teacher for Kitty Pryde. So this is a nice, nod back to a couple of other characters. And she's being pursued by a possessed Colossus. So that's some, craziness. Great cover. There's a great image of, Colossus in armored form about to, lay the smack down. And so what happened previous to get Colossus here is he went through the Siege Perilous. What that did to him is that spit him out in New York, where he was an artist named Peter Nichols. No memory of his life as Colossus or Peter Rasputin or anything. So he was enjoying his life there, a successful artist. X-Factor actually knew about him, but decided to let him, live his life like that because, give him a second chance and all. Xavier gets involved because he sees Stevie and he sees his former student, and so he's trying to do something, and he realizes he's going to have to rip apart the Peter Nichols persona in order to save Colossus. So he does, and Colossus regains his memory, everything about what his life was, and obviously gets rid of the Shadow King's influence. So they immediately go to X-Factor for help. Meanwhile, back on Muir Island, Forge is trying to stay alive, and he's one of the X-Men who was not being affected by the Shadow King. He comes up against Wolverine, is able to subdue him and free him from Shadow King's possession, as well as Rogue, who was coming in to fight them as well. They're interrupted by Banshee, who they quickly also subdue and make him aware of what's going on. So they finally figure out that Polaris is the one who is acting as the Nexus, and they come to the grim decision that in order to defeat the Shadow King, they may have to kill Polaris. So at this point, Polaris had lost her magnetic powers and has basically gained the ability to absorb negative energy and negative emotions to enhance her strength. And she was the Nexus for the Shadow King. So we have that going on. Then X-Factor comes in and with Xavier and Colossus, and they come fight to try and fight the X-Men, or the possessed X-Men and Shadow King. They land in Muir Island. They are basically able to dismantle all these security procedures and go into fight. Xavier realizes that the Shadow King has come back and is possessing a human, and he goes to fight with him. Val Cooper, who is the liaison to X-Factor and the U.S. Commission on Mutant Affairs, I believe it is, as well as head of the Freedom Force. She comes along with them, and then it's revealed she's actually Mystique, and she kills, I think it's Jacob Rice, who's the man that Shadow King is possessing, because he, in turn, Shadow King, was part of the reason why Legion ended up killing Destiny, which is her lover. So this kind of poetic revenge, which was really kind of cool to see, because a few issues ago, before the X-Factor, the Extinction Agenda, we were led to believe that Mystique killed herself. But she wasn't. She's alive. So that was really cool to kind of get that, a storyline being, told. Then we have Xavier reuniting with the X-Factor, reuniting with all the X-Men, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Because Shadow King has lost his connection, he finds the next best thing, which is Legion. And that's crazy because Legion is so crazy powerful, but also crazy unstable. And so Xavier goes into the astral plane to fight the Shadow King, and the rest of the X-Men go out to find X-Factor and X-Men go out to find the Muir Island mutants and the other X-Men who are still possessed and fight them and stop them and hopefully get rid of Lorna's connection to the astral plane and the negative energies and all those Nexus things. Then Jean realizes that Xavier's physical body is getting damaged from the fight, and so she takes some of the X-Men inside the astral plane to kind of fight and help Xavier out. Forge and the other X-Men come along and find Psylocke still possessed, and they're able to use to free Psylocke, but also use the totality of her psychic abilities, the psychic knife, and plunge it into Lorna's head, and disrupting her connection to the Nexus, which in turn disrupts and destroys Shadow King's connection to the real world. So it was a win. They saved Polaris, and they saved the world. They defeated Shadow King for now. But it was really, really great, because then at the end you see that all the toll that it took on Xavier, which was he's now paralyzed again. And it was really kind of like in X-Factor you see Pyrrhic victory. That's exactly what it was. It was a Pyrrhic victory. The X-Men and X-Factor saved the day, however, at what cost? And this was such a great storyline because it's only 5 issues, but there's so much happening in there, and there's so much tying up of loose ends and then opening things up for the next, set of excitement that is going to happen, the stories and the team lineups that are going to be coming up. Because what ends up happening at the very end of this is you have 14 X-Men. You have X-Factor, who's decided to rejoin the X-Men, so X-Factor is no longer happening. So that means Jean, Bobby, Hank, Warren and Scott are all back in the X-Men, along with Storm, Forge, Banshee, Colossus, Rogue, Wolverine, Psylocke, Jubilee. If I'm forgetting anybody on that one, there was quite a few there. So they're all coming together to be the X-Men. So what are they going to do? Leaving some of the Muir Island mutants, like Multiple Man, Polaris, Strong Guy, to be wrangled up by Val Cooper to reform X-Factor and Freedom Force into a government agency, mutant-sanctioned government team. And then you have Siren, who's left there, who ends up getting to join the X-Force, which is kind of cool too. So it was a really kind of cool clearing of the deck, tying up all these loose ends, and setting the way and paving the way for X-Men 1, X-Factor 72 or 71, X-Force 1. What else was Uncanny X-Men 281? So all these great new, brand new storylines, story arcs that happen, it came out of this, and it's so really, really cool. So I really do have a lot of affection for this storyline, the Muir Island Saga. You can find it in collections, but it's so good, and so some of the art from the X-Factor side is a little not as great, but it was so good. There was great character interactions. There were some great moments between Rogue and Mystique, and their kind of like moments. You have Gambit there with yeah, that's the one I forgot. Gambit and his kind of beginning to flirt with Rogue moments. And it was just a really cool culmination of that kind of storyline after the X-Men are declared dead in X-Men, living in the Outback, going through Seeds Perilous, going through Extinction Agenda, and then coming out at the end of it and reforming and rededicating themselves to Xavier's dream. So I really do love Muir Island Saga. I think it's a really great storyline. It's only 5 issues, pretty easy to get through. But let me know what your favorite part was. Did you enjoy seeing the X-Men and X-Factor team up to save the day against Shadow King? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and share. And I'm going to be back to give you some more Marvel goodness soon. And as always, it's all geek to us.